Captain Laura Bennett stood on the bridge of the UES Harbinger, humanity's most advanced warship. The large viewing window showed the stars of the Centauri system spread out before her. She brushed a strand of brown hair from her face and studied the holographic display floating in front of her. It showed 5 planets orbiting a yellow sun, with small red dots marking the positions of alien ships. "Status report," Laura said, her voice calm despite the tension in her shoulders. First Officer Daniel Lewis looked up from his console. "All systems normal, Captain. We're maintaining position at the edge of the system. No movement from the Luminari. Vessels yet?" Laura nodded. Humanity had explored space for centuries, meeting several alien species along the way. Most were primitive, barely reaching beyond their own moons. The Luminari were different. Their technology nearly matched human capabilities, and they controlled several star systems near human space. But there was something else that made them unique. Their entire civilization followed a strict religion that worshipped their leaders as gods. The bridge door slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Keith Morgan walked in, his face tight with worry. He was an older man with gray hair at his temples and deep lines around his eyes. Those eyes had seen many diplomatic missions, but never one that had gone so wrong. "Captain, we have a problem," Keith said. "The Luminari High Priests have detained our diplomatic team. They're demanding that all humans acknowledge their divinity and submit to their rule." Laura frowned. "They can't seriously expect us to worship them." "They do," Keith replied. "Their society is built entirely around their religion. Their leaders, who they call the Divine Council, are believed to perform miracles. Anyone who questions them is punished. And now they see humanity's refusal to worship as the greatest crime possible." The communication screen lit up, showing Defense Coordinator Samantha Wells back at Earth Command. Her short blonde hair was neatly styled, but her expression was grim. "Captain Bennett, diplomatic channels have broken down completely," Samantha said. "The Luminari Supreme Oracle has declared that humanity's existence is an insult to their gods. They've mobilized their battle fleet. We've intercepted transmissions suggesting they plan to attack our border colonies first." Laura felt her stomach tighten. "Orders, ma'am?" "Prevent Luminary aggression if possible, but avoid all-out war if you can," Samantha replied. "The Harbinger is our best ship, but we're still assembling the rest of the fleet. You'll be on your own out there for at least 3 days." "Understood," Laura said. The communication ended, leaving the bridge quiet except for the soft beeping of instruments. Science Officer Alan Rodriguez called from his station, excitement in his voice. "Captain, I found something in the Luminary transmissions we've intercepted." Laura walked over to his console. Alan was young for his position, only 32, but his mind was brilliant. His dark eyes shone with discovery. "What is it, Alan?" she asked. "I've been analyzing their religious texts," he explained, pointing to scrolling alien symbols on his screen. "These references to divine light and the voice of heaven, they describe specific technologies. And these accounts of cosmic events match records of supernovae and black hole formations from centuries ago." "What are you saying?" Alan looked up at her. "Their entire belief system might be artificial, constructed deliberately, using real astronomical events and advanced technology to create the appearance of miracles." Laura considered this. "You think their leaders are tricking their own people?" "It looks that way," Alan nodded. "But why? And for how long? Their religion goes back nearly 1,000 years according to their records." The ship's intercom crackled. "Captain to engineering, please." Laura found Engineer Olivia Peterson surrounded by holographic diagrams of the ship's engine core. Olivia's hands were stained with grease, her red hair tied back in a messy ponytail. Despite working for 18 hours straight, her eyes were alert. "The quantum cascade drive is stable, Captain," Olivia said, pointing to a pulsing blue light at the center of the diagram. "I've managed to increase efficiency by 14%. "Good work," Laura said. "We might need every advantage we can get." Olivia wiped her hands on a cloth. "I heard about the Luminary. If it comes to a fight, I think we have an edge." Their ships use conventional fusion drives. They've never seen anything like our quantum tech. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Laura replied. An alarm blared through the ship. Laura rushed back to the bridge, where Security Chief Greg Harrison was monitoring the tactical display. Luminary vessels approaching New Portland Colony, Greg reported, his broad shoulders tense. 3 cruisers moving fast. Laura slid into her command chair. How many civilians on New Portland? About 40,000, Daniel answered. The colony's governor started evacuations when we first reported trouble, but they've only gotten about a quarter of the population off-world. Set course for New Portland maximum speed, Laura ordered. Communications, alert Earth Command. The stars blurred as the Harbinger jumped to faster-than-light travel. Laura felt the familiar slight pressure in her chest as the ship's artificial gravity adjusted. They arrived at New Portland within hours. The sight that greeted them made Laura's blood run cold. A luminary cruiser, sleek and silver with glowing purple engines, was firing on civilian transports trying to leave the planet. Scan those transports, Laura commanded. No weapons, Greg confirmed. Just families trying to evacuate. Laura stood up, her decision made. Battle stations, bring weapons online. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Weapons Officer Jason Phillips activated the ship's advanced targeting systems. We're still receiving a transmission from the luminary ships, said communications specialist Patricia Young. They're saying the humans must submit to divine judgment or face extinction. Laura watched as another civilian transport took a hit, its engines flaring. Open a channel, she said. When Patricia nodded, Laura spoke clearly. Luminary vessels, this is Captain Laura Bennett of the UES Harbinger. You're firing on unarmed civilian ships. Cease your attack immediately. The only response was another burst of weapons fire toward the transports. Target the lead luminary ship's weapon systems only, Laura ordered. Fire when ready. The Harbinger's advanced energy cannons lit up the blackness of space. The beams struck with precision, disabling the luminary cruiser's main weapons array, without destroying the ship. The other luminary vessels immediately changed course, turning their attention from the civilian transports to the Harbinger. They're powering up weapons, Greg warned. Laura took a deep breath. This wasn't a battle she had wanted, but she wouldn't let innocent people die. Not while she had the power to stop it. All hands, prepare for combat, she said. Let's show these self-proclaimed gods what humanity's finest ship can do. As the luminary ships approached, their hulls gleaming in the light of New Portland's sun, Laura knew her next decision would change the relationship between humans and luminary forever. Diplomacy had failed. The false gods had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs. The battle at New Portland lasted only 20 minutes, but it changed everything. The UES Harbinger disabled 2 luminary cruisers and forced the third to retreat. Captain Laura Bennett stood in the ship's medical bay, watching as doctors treated wounded crew members. They had saved thousands of civilians, but at a cost. 7 crew members injured, none killed, reported First Officer Daniel Lewis as he joined her. The luminary weren't expecting our defensive capabilities. Laura nodded. And the civilians? All remaining transports made it out safely. Earth Command is sending ships to evacuate the rest of the colony. A communication alert sounded from Laura's wrist device. She tapped it and Defense Coordinator Samantha Wells appeared as a small hologram. Captain, your actions at New Portland have triggered a response, Samantha said, her face serious. The Luminary Supreme Oracle has declared holy war against humanity. They're calling us heretics who must be cleansed from the universe. Laura frowned. We were defending innocent people. I know, Samantha replied, but now we need to understand what we're really facing. Your new orders are to gather intelligence on the true nature of the luminary leadership and their claims of divinity. One of their damaged cruisers is still adrift near New Portland. Get aboard it if possible. After the call ended, Laura met with Security Chief Greg Harrison in the planning room. Greg spread out holographic images of the damaged luminary ship. Their life support is still working, but most systems are offline, Greg explained. We detected about 20 crew members still aboard, likely in their emergency shelters. Can we get in without being detected? Laura asked. Greg nodded. I can lead a small team through an emergency airlock on their lower deck. Their internal sensors in that section were damaged in the battle. 6 hours later, Greg's team returned to the Harbinger. They moved quickly down the corridor, carrying several metal containers. Greg's face was flushed with excitement. "We found something, Captain," he said as they secured the area. "Something big." Greg opened one of the containers and removed a strange metal device. It was shaped like a crown with thin needles pointing inward and glowing purple crystals embedded in the outer surface. "We found dozens of these in their ship's cargo hold," Greg explained. "And these." He opened another container, revealing data storage units with alien markings. Laura called Science Officer Alan Rodriguez and Engineer Olivia Peterson to examine the findings. Alan carefully picked up the crown-like device. "This is neural interface technology," Alan said after scanning it with his tools. "Very advanced. The needles would connect directly to the brain of the wearer." "But why would they need these?" Laura asked. Olivia connected the alien data units to a secure computer system. "These have some kind of historical records," she said, as alien text and images filled the screen. "It might take time to decode everything." Communications specialist Patricia Young joined them. "I can help with the translation. I've been studying their language since first contact." For 3 days, Patricia and Alan worked to decode the luminary data. The Harbinger remained hidden in the shadow of New Portland's moon, watching as human fleet vessels arrived to evacuate the colony. Finally, Patricia called an urgent meeting. "We've decoded enough to understand what's happening," Patricia said, her voice trembling slightly. "The Luminari weren't always a religious society. About 800 years ago, a group of their scientists developed technology to directly stimulate and control their neural systems." She displayed images on the main screen showing ancient luminary text and diagrams. "These scientists used the technology to stage elaborate miracles," Patricia continued. "They could make people see things that weren't there, feel sensations, even experience what they thought were divine visions. They established themselves as gods and set up a ruling system that has continued through their descendants, the current Divine Council." Laura looked at the crown device. "And these are modern versions of that technology?" Alan nodded. "Yes, much more sophisticated, but the same basic principle. They use them to maintain control over their population. The luminary species has neural pathways that are particularly susceptible to this kind of manipulation." An emergency signal interrupted their discussion. "Captain, we're receiving a distress call from Europa 7 Research Outpost," reported the bridge officer. Laura rushed to the bridge. Europa 7 was a small human research facility only 2 light-years away. The view screen showed a harried-looking man with glasses and a singed lab coat. "This is scientist Frank Coleman at Europa 7, the man said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "We're under attack by Luminari ships. They've already landed troops. We need immediate assistance." "Europa 7 studies alien artifacts," Daniel said quietly to Laura, "including Luminari technology." "Set course immediately," Laura ordered. "Maximum speed." The Harbinger arrived at Europa 7 within hours, finding 2 Luminari ships in orbit. The research station, built into the side of a rocky moon, was partially damaged. "Luminari ground forces are inside the facility," Greg reported from Tactical. "About 30 soldiers, heavily armed." "Prepare a rescue team," Laura commanded. "We need to get our people out of there." While Greg prepared the rescue operation, Laura spoke with scientist Frank Coleman via a secured channel. He had barricaded himself and several colleagues in the deepest part of the research facility. "They came straight for our work on luminary technology," Frank explained, his voice hushed. "I think they know what we discovered." "What did you discover?" Laura asked. "The luminary leaders use a network of orbital stations to broadcast neural control signals across their territory," Frank said. "The signals reinforce their followers' religious devotion and maintain control. We mapped several of these stations along their border worlds." Before Frank could say more, an explosion sounded in the background of the transmission. "They're breaking through. We can't—" The communication cut off. Greg's rescue team fought their way into the facility while the Harbinger engaged the luminary ships in orbit. They returned with Frank and 5 other scientists, but lost 2 security personnel in the process. In the Harbinger's medical bay, Frank showed Laura the data they had salvaged from the research station. Here, he pointed to a map showing several small dots around Luminari space. These are their control stations. Each one broadcasts signals to nearby systems. Laura studied the map. If these stations are how they maintain control... Exactly. Frank nodded. Disable them and their divine powers start to fail. As the Harbinger prepared to jump to Earth space to report their findings, alarms blared across the ship. Multiple luminary warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, Greg announced. 7 vessels, full battle configuration. Laura's mind raced. They were outnumbered and cut off from reinforcements. Fighting directly would be suicide. She looked at the map of control stations again. There, she pointed to the nearest one, only half a light year away. Set course for this station. If we can't beat their ships, maybe we can break their hold on their followers. As the Harbinger changed course, the luminary ships followed. Laura knew they were gambling everything on this desperate move. If they failed, humanity would lose its most advanced ship, and the truth about the luminary deception might never reach Earth. But if they succeeded, they might change the course of the war before it truly began. The UES Harbinger raced toward the luminary control station with 7 enemy warships in pursuit. Captain Laura Bennett gripped the arms of her command chair as the ship shuddered under enemy fire. Their shields were holding, but barely. Time. To target? Laura asked, her voice steady despite the situation. 2 minutes, First Officer Daniel Lewis replied. On the main view screen, the control station grew larger. It looked like a giant metal flower with 6 petals, each one housing powerful broadcast equipment. Weapons Officer Jason Phillips turned from his console. Captain, their ships are moving to block our approach. We won't get close enough for a precision strike. Laura thought quickly. Olivia, can we modify our quantum cascade drive to disrupt their broadcast signal? In engineering, Olivia Peterson didn't hesitate. Theoretically, yes. The quantum field could interfere with their transmission pattern if I recalibrate it to match their frequency. Do it, Laura ordered. Greg, keep their ships busy. Use defensive maneuvers only. The Harbinger spun and dodged as Security Chief Greg Harrison worked the tactical controls. Luminary energy beams flashed past them, occasionally striking the shields in bursts of blue light. I need their exact broadcast frequency, Olivia called over the communication system. Science Officer Alan Rodriguez scanned the station, sending the data now. But Captain, I'm detecting something else. There are luminary civilians on 3 nearby planets receiving these signals. If we disrupt it suddenly, I don't know what will happen to them. Laura frowned. What do you mean? Their neural systems have been under this influence for their entire lives, Alan explained. Breaking it suddenly could cause trauma, maybe even death. Before Laura could respond, the ship rocked violently. A console exploded in sparks. Direct hit, Greg shouted. Shields at 40%. We're out of time, Laura said grimly. Olivia, proceed with the disruption. Alan, can we modify the signal to minimize harm to civilians? Alan's fingers flew over his controls. I can try to create a gentler disruption pattern. It won't stop the signal completely, but it might break the control without causing neural shock. Do it, Laura nodded. Send the pattern to Olivia. Another hit rocked the ship. Shields at 25%, Greg reported. We can't take much more of this. Modification ready, Olivia announced. Initiating quantum cascade on your command. Laura took a deep breath. This decision could save the war, or make her responsible for countless alien deaths. Initiate. The ship hummed as the quantum cascade drive activated in its new configuration. On the view screen, a wave of distortion spread from the Harbinger toward the control station. When it reached the station, the flower-like petals flickered and dimmed. It's working, Alan exclaimed. Their broadcast signal is destabilizing. Something unexpected happened next. 3 of the luminary warships suddenly stopped firing. They drifted in space as if their crews were confused. We're receiving transmissions from the nearby luminary. Planets, communications specialist Patricia Young reported with surprise. They're chaotic. Many luminari seem confused, even frightened. Some are questioning why they're at war with us. Laura leaned forward. Are we receiving any transmissions from the luminary ships? Patricia adjusted her controls. Yes, from one of them. Audio only. Putting it through. A calm, alien voice filled the bridge. Human vessel, this is Commander Zevrathi of the luminary ship Truthseeker. Do not fire. I wish to speak with your captain. Laura exchanged glances with Daniel. This could be a trap, he whispered. It could also be our only chance, she replied. Open a channel. Laura spoke clearly. This is Captain Laura Bennett of the UES Harbinger. We are defending ourselves against unprovoked aggression. I understand, Zevrathi replied. What you may not know is that some of us have been fighting the Divine Council from within for generations. There are luminari, whose neural structures are naturally resistant to the control signals. We form a secret resistance. Laura raised an eyebrow. Why should I believe you? Because 4 of our ships are still attacking you, while 3, including mine, have stopped, Zevrathi answered. Your disruption has freed many of my crew from control, but others remain loyal to the Divine Council. Civil conflict has erupted on my ship, as it has on the others. On the view screen, Laura could see fighting had indeed broken out among the luminari fleet. 2 ships were actually firing on each other. We've spent centuries trying to free our people, Zevrathi continued. But we lack the strength to challenge the Council directly. Your arrival may have given us the opportunity we needed. Laura considered this. What do you propose? An alliance, Zevrathi said. Help us free more of our people. In return, we'll help you defend against the Council's attacks. They're preparing a massive assault on Earth itself. The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Captain, Alan spoke up. I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the remaining luminari ships. They're changing course, heading back toward their territory at maximum speed. Laura frowned. Why would they retreat now? The answer came from scientist Frank Coleman, who had been quietly analyzing data in the background. Captain, I've been reviewing luminary communications. The Supreme Oracle has ordered all forces to protect something called the Divine Light. They seem frightened by what we've done here. The Divine Light. Zevrathi's voice grew urgent. That's their doomsday weapon. It can trigger supernovae. They've threatened to use it against rebellious worlds before, but never actually activated it. If they're calling ships to protect it, they're planning to use it against human worlds. Laura finished the thought. How much time do we have? Days, perhaps, Zevrathi replied. The weapon requires significant preparation. Laura turned to Daniel. Contact Earth immediately. They need to know what we're facing. To Zevrathi, she said. Commander, we'll need everything you know about this weapon and any vulnerabilities it might have. I'll send all the information we have, Zevrathi promised. But there's something else you should know. The Supreme Oracle is different from other luminari. His neural patterns are completely resistant to disruption. He's neither controlled nor a controller. He truly believes he is divine. Laura's expression hardened. Belief won't save him if he threatens human worlds. As the Harbinger limped away from the control station, Laura received a message from Earth. Political advisor Nancy Williams appeared on screen, her face grave. Captain Bennett, the leadership is divided on how to proceed, Nancy said. Some want to ally with the luminary resistance as you suggest. Others believe any interference violates our principles of non-intervention in alien civilizations. They argue we should focus solely on defense. Laura couldn't hide her frustration. While we debate, the luminari are preparing to destroy entire human star systems. Nancy nodded. I know. That's why we're giving you extraordinary authority. You're to proceed as you see fit to neutralize this threat. Earth will support whatever decision you make. After the communication ended, Laura stood alone on the bridge watching the stars. Engineer Olivia Peterson joined her. I've been working with Alan on modifying our quantum cascade drive, Olivia said quietly. Theoretically, we could create a device that would disrupt all Luminari control signals simultaneously, throughout their territory. That would free their entire population at once, Laura mused. Olivia nodded. But the models suggest such a massive disruption could have severe neurological effects. For some, it might be fatal. Laura closed her eyes briefly. The weight of command had never felt heavier. How long to build this device? 2 days, maybe 3, Olivia replied. Begin work, Laura ordered. But keep looking for a way to minimize harm. As Olivia left, Laura turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there, a being who called himself the Supreme Oracle was preparing to demonstrate his divine wrath by destroying human worlds. She had to stop him, but the cost of victory might be higher than she could bear. 2 days passed as the UES Harbinger and 3 Luminari resistance ships traveled toward the heart of Luminari space. Captain Laura Bennett studied the plans on her display screen. The target was a massive space station orbiting the Luminari homeworld, the headquarters of the Divine Council, and home to the Supreme Oracle. Our intelligence suggests the Divine Light Weapon is housed in this section, Commander Zevrathi explained, highlighting part of the station on the holographic display. The Luminary commander had come aboard the Harbinger to coordinate their attack. He looked almost human, except for his purple skin and 6 fingers on each hand. And the control broadcast center? Laura asked. Zevrathi pointed to another section. Here. It's the source of the signals that maintain control over our population. Both targets are heavily defended. Security Chief Greg Harrison shook his head. A direct assault would be suicide, even with our combined forces. That's why we're not launching a direct assault, Laura said. We're going to split into 2 teams. The first team will create a distraction by attacking the outer defenses. The second team will infiltrate the station and complete 2 objectives. Disable the Divine Light Weapon and replace the control broadcast with the truth. Replace the broadcast? Science Officer Alan Rodriguez asked. Laura nodded. Instead of just disrupting their signal, we'll replace it with actual historical records showing how the divine leadership established their control. We'll focus on military and civilian leaders, people in positions of authority. That could work, Zevrathi agreed. Many would turn against the council if they knew the truth. Lieutenant Eric Kennedy stepped forward, a young officer with a talent for covert operations. He had been quiet until now. I can lead the infiltration team, Captain. Laura studied him. It will be extremely dangerous, Lieutenant. Eric's expression remained determined. Someone has to do it, Captain. I have the most experience with infiltration missions. After a moment, Laura nodded. Very well. Select 5 crew members to join you. Commander Zevrathi, can you provide 2 of your people who know the station layout? Of course, Zevrathi agreed. Engineer Olivia Peterson entered the room carrying a small device. It's ready, Captain. The modified quantum cascade emitter can be set to broadcast the historical records through their own network. It's designed to target specific neural patterns, those of military commanders and government officials. That way, we minimize collateral damage to the general population. Laura took the device. It was smaller than she expected, about the size of her palm. Good work, Olivia. This goes with the infiltration team. The meeting ended and final preparations began. Laura stood alone in her quarters looking at a photo of Earth on her desk. So much depended on this mission. If they failed, human worlds would burn. If they succeeded but caused mass harm to Luminari civilians, how could humanity live with that? Her door chimed. It was First Officer Daniel Lewis. The teams are ready, Captain. We launch in 30 minutes. Thank you, Daniel, Laura said. If this goes wrong, it won't, Daniel replied firmly. But if it does, the Harbinger will cover the retreat of the infiltration team for as long as possible. Laura nodded, grateful for his confidence. Let's go. The battle began 3 hours later. The Harbinger and 2 resistance ships engaged the outer defenses of the Luminary command station, drawing fire and attention. Meanwhile, a small stealth shuttle carrying Lieutenant Eric Kennedy's infiltration team approached from a different angle. On the Harbinger's bridge, Laura watched the tactical display as red dots representing Luminary defense ships moved to intercept them. "They're taking the bait," Greg reported. "Most of their forces are moving to engage us." "Keep them occupied," Laura ordered. "Lieutenant Kennedy, status?" Eric's voice came through with a slight static. "Approaching docking bay 6. Minimal resistance. So far," Weapons Officer Jason Phillips called out. "Enemy ships in range. They're charging weapons." "Evasive maneuvers," Laura commanded. "Return fire. Defensive pattern alpha." The space around the Harbinger lit up with energy blasts as the battle began in earnest. The human warship moved with surprising agility for its size, dodging some attacks while its advanced shields absorbed others. "We've docked," Eric reported. "Moving inside now." Laura couldn't respond as the Harbinger took a direct hit. The bridge shook violently, and a console exploded in a shower of sparks. "Shields at 60%, Greg called out. That was their flagship. It has heavier weapons than the others. On the view screen, Laura could see the enormous Luminary vessel. Nearly twice the size of the Harbinger, it gleamed with a golden hull that reflected the light of the nearby star. "The Supreme Oracle is aboard that ship," Zevrathi said from his position on the bridge. "He rarely leaves it." Laura narrowed her eyes. "Focus fire on their weapon systems. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed." Inside the Luminary command station, Eric's team moved through dimly lit corridors. 2 Luminary resistance members led the way, guiding them toward the control center. They encountered several patrols, but managed to avoid or quietly neutralize them. "Control center ahead," one of the Luminary guides whispered. "Heavy security." Eric peered around a corner. 6 guards stood outside a large door, all heavily armed. "We need a distraction," he said quietly. He turned to one of his team members. "Set charges on the power junction 2 corridors back. Time them for 30 seconds. The team member nodded and moved away silently. Half a minute later, an explosion rocked the station. Alarms blared and the guards ran toward the source of the disturbance. Eric and his team slipped inside the control center. Inside, they found 3 Luminary technicians who reached for weapons. Eric's team stunned them before they could fire. Working quickly, they secured the room. "Connect the device," Eric ordered. One of his team plugged Olivia's quantum cascade emitter into the main console. The small device lit up with blue energy. "Uploading. Historical records now," the team member reported. 20 seconds to broadcast. Eric activated his communicator. "Captain, we've secured the control center. Beginning broadcast momentarily." Outside, the battle had intensified. The Harbinger took another direct hit, this one breaching the hull. "On deck 4. Casualty reports coming in," Daniel said grimly. 5 crew members injured, 2 critical. Laura's hands tightened on her chair arms. "Maintain position. We need to give them more time." Broadcast initiated. Eric's voice came through. Moving to second objective, the Divine Light weapon. Across Luminary space, the broadcast began reaching its targets. On ships and planets, Luminary military commanders and government officials suddenly received the unaltered historical truth. Images and records showing how their ancestors had used technology to fake divinity and establish control. The effect was immediate. Several Luminary ships attacking the Harbinger suddenly stopped firing. Others turned against their former allies in confusion and anger. "It's working," Zevrathi said, wonder in his voice. "They're seeing the truth." But their success was short-lived. A massive energy surge emanated from the Golden flagship. "The Supreme Oracle is overriding the broadcast on his ship," Alan reported urgently. "And I'm detecting energy buildups in the station. They're activating the Divine Light." Laura hit her communicator. "Lieutenant Kennedy, they're activating the weapon. You need to disable it now." "Moving as fast as we can, Captain," Eric replied, his voice strained. "We've encountered heavy resistance." On the view screen, Laura watched in horror as the Golden flagship began moving toward Earth space, even as parts of the Luminary fleet fought each other. "He's going to deploy the weapon himself," Laura realized. "All weapons. Target that ship's engines. We cannot let it escape." The Harbinger fired everything it had at the golden vessel. Luminary resistance ships joined the attack, but it wasn't enough. The Supreme Oracle's flagship began to accelerate. "Captain," Eric's voice came through, weaker now. "We've reached the weapon control room, but we've taken casualties. I don't think we can disable it from here in time." Laura closed her eyes briefly, then made her decision. "Return to your shuttle immediately, Lieutenant. That's an order." "But Captain..." "Now, Lieutenant, the Harbinger will handle the weapon." Laura turned to Olivia. "Can we modify our main quantum cascade drive to generate an energy pulse that would neutralize the divine light?" Olivia's face paled. "Yes, but it would burn out our drive completely. We'd be stranded here, and the pulse might damage other systems. We might not survive." Laura looked around the bridge at her crew. They all knew what was at stake. "Do it," she ordered quietly. As Eric's team fought their way back to their shuttle, the Harbinger moved to intercept the Supreme Oracle's flagship. The quantum cascade drive hummed with increasing intensity as Olivia pushed it beyond its design limits. "Energy pulse ready," Olivia reported from engineering. "But Captain, this will destroy our drive systems." "Understood," Laura replied. "Target the flagship and fire when ready." A blinding pulse of blue-white energy erupted from the Harbinger, engulfing the golden ship. For a moment, everything seemed frozen in time. Then the Supreme Oracle's flagship drifted to a stop, its weapons and drive systems dead. Greg reported. "The divine light weapon is offline." A cheer went up on the bridge, but it was short-lived. Multiple systems on the Harbinger began to fail. The lights flickered and emergency power activated. 6 months passed. The UES Harbinger, once crippled in luminary space, had been repaired enough to make the journey home. Now it approached Earth, bearing the scars of battle. Entire sections had been rebuilt using luminary technology freely, given by their new allies. The once smooth hull was now a patchwork of human and alien materials. Captain Laura Bennett stood on the observation deck, watching as the blue planet grew larger in the view screen. Her uniform hung a bit loose on her frame. The past months had taken their toll, but her eyes remained sharp and determined. "It's good to be home," said First Officer Daniel Lewis, joining her at the window. Laura nodded. "I wasn't sure we'd make it back." "The crew is ready for the welcome ceremony," Daniel reported. "Everyone's in dress uniform." Laura smiled slightly. "They deserve all the recognition they'll get." 3 hours later, Laura stood before the United Earth Council in their grand chamber in Geneva. The room was filled with government officials, military leaders, and media representatives. Laura felt strange in her formal dress uniform after months of wearing whatever was available on their damaged ship. "Captain Bennett," said the council president, "on behalf of humanity, we thank you and your crew for your extraordinary service. Your actions prevented what could have been a devastating war." Laura stepped up to the podium. "Thank you, Madam President. The credit belongs to my entire crew, especially those who gave their lives during our mission. I also must acknowledge our luminary allies, without whom we would not have succeeded." From the audience, Commander Zevrathi nodded. The luminary officer had accompanied the Harbinger back to Earth as the first official representative of the new luminary government. "Tell us, Captain," the president said, "what is the current situation with the luminary civilization?" Laura took a deep breath. "The luminary have undergone a profound transformation. Without the neural control of their false gods, they've established a democratic government. Commander Zevrathi has been elected as their first prime minister." Zevrathi stood to polite applause. Laura continued, "The transition has not been entirely smooth. Many luminari are struggling with their new freedom. Some fringe groups still cling to the old religion despite knowing its fraudulent origins." Later that day, Laura met with cultural attaché Susan Mitchell in a quiet office overlooking Lake Geneva. Susan had spent the past 3 months on the luminary homeworld, studying their society's transformation. "The social disruption has been significant," Susan explained, showing Laura images of luminary cities. "For generations, every aspect of their lives was guided by religious doctrine. Now they're forced to make their own choices. It's frightening for many of them." Laura looked at the images with concern. Are they blaming us for this upheaval? Some are, Susan admitted, but most recognize that they were living under a system of control and deception. They're grateful, even if adjustment is difficult. Susan hesitated, then brought up another image. It showed a small shrine-like structure in a luminary home. At its center was a grainy image of the Harbinger. What's this? Laura asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew. This is where things get complicated, Susan said quietly. Some Luminari have begun venerating humans, particularly the crew of the Harbinger, as true divine beings who freed them from false gods. Laura closed her eyes briefly. That's exactly what we didn't want. We've tried to discourage this view, Susan assured her. But think about it from their perspective. Powerful beings arrived from the stars and broke the power of those they had thought were gods. It's a natural conclusion for some. That evening, Ambassador Keith Morgan found Laura sitting alone in the memorial garden outside Earth Command headquarters. The garden was peaceful, with fountains and flowers from across human colonies. Quite a hero's welcome today, Keith said, sitting beside her. Laura looked at the memorial wall where the names of those lost in the conflict had been added. I don't feel much like a hero. Keith studied her face. You prevented a war that could have killed billions. You exposed a lie that had enslaved an entire civilization for centuries. If that's not heroic, I don't know what is. And now some of them are worshipping us, Laura said bitterly. We've just replaced one false religion with another. Not the same thing at all, Keith argued. You never claimed to be divine. You never tried to control them. You gave them the truth and let them make their own choices. That some choose poorly isn't your responsibility. Laura wasn't convinced. When I was at the podium today, I looked out at the faces watching me. Do you know what I saw? Awe. Not just respect or gratitude, but awe. What happens when advanced technology makes us seem godlike to others? What happens when that power tempts us to control rather than liberate? Keith had no answer for that. 2 days later, engineer Olivia Peterson requested an urgent meeting with Laura. They met in a secure laboratory at Earth Command, where Olivia had been working with luminary scientists. You've made a discovery, Laura said, noting Olivia's excitement. Olivia nodded, displaying complex energy patterns on a large screen. I've been studying the quantum cascade technology that helped win the war. Look at these energy patterns it generates. Laura studied. The flowing, beautiful patterns. What am I looking at? Now look at this, Olivia said, displaying an ancient luminary text. The illustrations showed remarkably similar patterns. These are from luminary religious texts describing the divine light. The similarities are too close to be coincidence. Laura felt a chill. What are you saying? What if the false gods based their religion on something real? Olivia suggested. What if, centuries ago, they encountered advanced technology they didn't understand? Maybe they saw quantum energy patterns and built their religion around them, not knowing what they really were. If that's true, Laura said slowly, then we've completed a circle. Their false religion was based on misunderstanding technology, and now our technology has ended that religion. The next morning, Laura stood alone in the Harbinger's observation deck. The ship was docked at Earth's orbital station, waiting for orders for its next mission. Through the viewport, she could see Earth below and a luminary diplomatic vessel nearby. Her communication device chimed. Captain Bennett, this is Admiral Clark. We have new orders for the Harbinger. There's a situation developing in the Proxima system that requires your attention. Understood, Admiral. We'll prepare for departure. Laura continued looking out at the stars. The Harbinger would soon venture out again, representing humanity to the galaxy. Its advanced technology would seem like magic to some, perhaps even divine to others. The line between being seen as liberators and becoming the very thing they fought against was thinner than she had ever realized. As crew members began preparing the ship for its next mission, Laura made a silent promise to herself. The Harbinger would never use its power to control, only to liberate. They would never allow themselves to be worshipped, only to be allies. And if they encountered others who claimed divinity, they would remember the lesson of the Luminari, that true freedom comes not from following gods, but from finding truth. The Harbinger's engines hummed to life, ready to carry its crew to new stars and new challenges. Whatever they found out there, Laura knew one thing for certain. Humanity would face it not as gods, but as explorers seeking understanding in a vast and mysterious universe.